Hello, Tom Jacobus with the Power Networking Club here with a Power Talk with Eric Winn. Eric Winn served in the United States Army from 2003 to 2011. He is a Purple Heart and Bronze Star with Valor recipient. I heard Eric speak on Memorial Day at Buckingham Fountain here in downtown Chicago, where I was very impressed not only by his passion for the country, but also because his message was clearly not political one way or the other. He is a true American patriot with a passion for his country and for upholding the Constitution to protect the rights of every American. And you'll see if you visit our page exactly what I'm talking about. We've got copies of those videos on our pages. Eric, I want to thank you, first and foremost, thank you for your service to our country. It's an honor to be speaking with you today. And I want to just have you, tell us a little bit about your story, about your service to our country, your position on what's happening today in regards to the lockdown. And then lastly, we'll talk about what's happening in regards to George Floyd and that horrific situation. So take it away, Eric.
First off, I'm going to start off I'm going to apologize beforehand. My sinuses have been running, so my voice is a little rough. I don't have COVID. This happens every time of year this year. Like he said, like Tom said, I joined the military in May of 2003. I was medically retired in January of 2011. During that time, I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I did make it to the rank of staff sergeant. I learned a lot along the way. I was blessed to have the leadership that I had while I was serving and be able to serve with so many different men and women from one side of the spectrum to the other. That was being born out in West Texas. We have a decent mix, but when you grow up in one place, and we had Hispanics, we had a few Asians, we had some blacks, and we had whites, but we all grew up the same. Everybody was farming, ranching. It was a country type way of life. So when I joined the military, I was meeting people from Los Angeles, Compton, Seattle, New York, New Jersey, Georgia, from coast to coast, border to border. I mean, you have a bit of everything, and that's one thing that I wish every American could really experience. Because if you go in with open eyes and you really listen to what your brothers in arms are saying, and you build a bond through hardship and pretty much kind of like suffering. You go through everything together, and so you've learned to listen to hear what they're saying and not to listen to hear just to respond. You were talking to me earlier, Tom, excuse me, about the how I got the Bronze Star with Valor and the Purple Heart. It'd actually be 11 years ago this month, May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd. I was with Blue Platoon, that's 3rd Platoon and 6-4 Cab with the Big Red One. We were stationed in Afghanistan, and there was an OP that we had in the Kunar Valley called OP Barialai. And on early morning, May 1st, the excuse me, Al Qaeda had decided to attack, and they overran the whole FOB. As far as I'm aware of right now, and I've spoken with, I still keep in contact with all the men of that platoon, or of my platoon back then, but we'd lost every American that was on the hill that day, and we were in a tight spot. We were forced to make a lot of decisions. Not all the decisions we made were right, and when you make a decision over there, it costs lives. So we fought all day May 1st, all day May 2nd, and come real late night May 2nd, early morning May 3rd, they decided to move us over to OP East, and myself and 9 other Americans were posted on OP East. And just after dark, another first happened, and they actually hit us right after the sun went down. And there was an estimated 80 to 100 guys that were assaulting the 10 of us, and we had a small Afghan force with us. But they had 3 support by fire positions, a couple RPG teams that were shooting in on top of us, and then they had a very large force that was assaulting forward and trying to overrun us, just like they had OP Barla a few days before. And we ended up fighting. I think we ended up firing 56,000 rounds of 5.56, 23 to 24,000 rounds of 7.62 by 5.1. We went through 43 grenades in less than 30 minutes, 30, 45 minutes, something like that. And I'd been wounded again. Well, I'd caught one round on May 1st in my right leg. It hit my wallet, ricochet hit my wallet, and I got a little bit of scuff and cuff, nothing too big. And then on May 2nd, I took another round in the left leg that had hit my my notepad pen, and I'd caught a little bit of shrap off that, but nothing major, nothing serious, cuts and bruises. And on May 3rd, there was an anti-aircraft gun that they were using. It's called a Dishka. For those of you that don't know, it's a 50 cal Russian machine gun they used to knock planes out of the air. And they were firing down on our location, and I had a substantially large rock in front of me. And one of the rounds impacted right below my left hand, and when it impacted, it exploded, and I got shrapnel all up the left side of my hand and down my arm. When people say, you know, like, how'd you get your Purple Heart, and I tell them I've been hit a couple times, and I go through my whole military history. They're like, oh my gosh, you're lucky to be alive. Well, we were all pretty well lucky to be alive after those 3 days. Those of us that did survive, God rest the souls of the men who didn't. But it was one of the worst weeks of my life, but I still learned from it. I mean, it's not something that kind of at a loss of words right now. Still get a little
Sure
emotional thinking about that. I'm blessed. Sorry, I'm not trying to be cut the story short, but I'm blessed to have the leadership that I had. My Lieutenant Rodriguez was amazing. The men that I served with, the platoon sergeant, I mean, they fought hard. They were never willing to raise a white flag. They were never willing to quit. And I think that's why we made it through that night with no more than what had happened. We didn't have any more casualties on May 3rd. So that was a blessing by far.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know that's not easy to recall. Of a good buddy who also served over there, and it's not easy to recall what happened there. It's it's very difficult. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you again for your service. You're blessed to have survived, and we're blessed to have you here and to be upholding the Constitution now as a civilian. Tell us a little bit about what you think about what's going on with the lockdown in this country.
Like most people, when the virus first hit America, and they said, we're gonna really social distance, we're gonna stop going to non-essential jobs. That first 30 days, my wife and I talked about it. We were like, it's probably a good thing. Like everybody else, we didn't know what was coming. We're not doctors, so we decided to take the advice. We pretty well locked up here on our property and had our children with us. We did everything we could to stay out of large crowds, away from a bunch of people. We didn't go see our friends, our family, just like everybody else. After that 30 days had come around and more info started coming out, I mean, you really get into 5.5 weeks of that. And I mean, naturally, everybody's going stir crazy, but you got to be able to take a step back and really look at what's going on. And like I stated before, I'm not a doctor, so this is just my personal opinion.
Sure.
But I would get on the CDC page. We follow that real close. The National Health Center for Statistics, and the numbers wasn't lining up for us. We were like, well, they were calling for these huge amount of numbers. These everybody's going to get this. Dr. N. Lipkin was one of the gentlemen that I was following real close. He's the world's leading virologist in the world. I mean, the that's how he makes his money. That's what his study of expertise is in. And he was saying the stuff that he was saying on his page and the things that he was talking about. India did a real big cover story with him that I never did see it on anything over here in America. And it's not really lining up with what Dr. Fauci was saying, and the numbers wasn't either. So we've really started kind of changing our perspective. And the CDC just came out a few days ago saying the actual death rate was 0.26, I believe. I mean, in comparison to anything, and I know you can't compare one pandemic to another. Everybody says it's like comparing apples and oranges, but you can't shut down perfectly healthy people and to protect the weak. And I don't mean that in a bad way. And if you look at it in terms of functionality, we've always said you're only as strong as your weakest link. Well, if we stop everybody from working, we're destroying businesses. We're destroying jobs. We're destroying whole livelihoods, whole communities that are not going to recover from an actual lockdown. And it's one of them things where you've got to have, in the military, we call them acceptable losses or acceptable risks. Now, any loss of life is tragic. And I think anybody would agree with me on that. But at the same time, you have to be able to keep pushing forward, because once everything's said, done, and over with, life goes on. You still have to have businesses. You still have to have jobs. You're still going to have to pay taxes. You still got to be able to feed your family. And it's to a point now where they can't really expect us to stay locked down. I mean, it's not even feasible. The information that they had was wrong. What they put out to us was completely wrong. Maybe their heart was in the right place, but now that the numbers are out, we're starting to see stuff. A good level-headed leader would come forth and say, hey guys, you know what, we took the proper steps, we took the proper precautions. Now's the time. Okay, we know we're wrong. Let's go ahead and step forward and start pushing back out. Let's get people back to work, because the American people, they keep pushing these stimulus bills. Well, that money's got to come from somewhere. People don't want to hand out. They want to hand up. They want to be able to make it on their own. That's the American dream. That's what the republic is for, is so you can, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I think we should be going back to work. I guess that was a long way around to getting to say. I think everybody should be going back out and working again, unless you're sick. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you have health issues, if they can give everybody a note that's essential worker to go to work, then go in and protect the ones that can, and let them stay home. I don't blame them. My fear can be very controlling in many aspects, but I'm a firm believer that our politicians and the media has chosen to use fear to control us in more ways than one, not just on the pandemic.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with every word you said. I too, thought, this is for the best. The first 4 to 6 weeks seemed like, we had to make sure that we got a handle on this. And, but after a while, things come to surface, and we can't be, sheep just blindly led around. Anyone, like you said, any intelligent leader is going to step forward and start to question things. And I think that's what this movement that Anthony has started here, the E2 movement, is very valid. And unfortunately, being in an election year and being in the most turbulent time politically, I think, in our country's history, I don't think we've ever been more divided. And unfortunately, the money behind both parties, I'm not calling out either side here. The money behind both political parties is going to not put a good pandemic or a good crisis to waste, as I've heard a lot of politicians, say over the years. So, I too am in agreement that, we have rights. The government is overreached. And, we as American citizens need to turn to the American Constitution, like you so eloquently spoke about last Monday on Memorial Day. I'm going to keep replaying that. You had such a powerful message, and I want to thank you for that message, and thank you again for for your service to this country. You're a true patriot.
Well, I appreciate that, sir.
Yep.
I
So,
think there would be some people that would disagree with you right now, though.
oh, well, certainly there is. There's a strong divide.
Yes, sir.
There are people that I believe are just following mainstream media, and I think that's part of the issue. And of course, as you said it so well, it's their right to believe what they want to believe. That's what you fought for. That's what 1.4 million Americans died for, is for us to have our constitutional rights. So everyone's entitled to their belief, and unfortunately, shifting now to Mr. George Floyd in Minneapolis, that is a tragedy. Like I've never been affected so much by an incident, because uh, it was so horrific to watch. A candid video of a white police officer literally crushing the windpipe an unarmed black man who was handcuffed behind his back and face down. It. I'm still in shock over that, and of course, this past week we've seen this rioting going on, and again, I think it lends itself to political manipulation. So I just want to get some thoughts from you about what's going on there, Eric.
First off, I would like to say that my wife and I and our children, our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Mr. Floyd. That is anything like that is extremely tragic. I personally did not watch the video. I was told pretty graphically how it was. I've seen enough death in life. I don't need to watch it again to understand what's right and what's wrong. That's one thing. Excuse me. That's one thing that kind of blows my mind. I mean, right now we've got the officer that did it has been arrested. Everybody in America, and I mean, it was actually probably one of the most unanimous statements that you could hear was like, this officer is guilty. We have video. We know he's guilty. Everybody was pretty well backing for that. Not in. I mean, I personally have not seen one person say the cop was in the right.
Absolutely.
There's no way you could. I mean, I've seen still photos. I've read the stories from the left wing media and the right wing media, and I was actually pretty surprised at how much from other officers. I know plenty of officers that are spread out across America, and I speak with all of them on a pretty regular basis. We served in the military together, and even the officers that I know were coming out and speaking out against this man's actions. And that, I think that's why right now, which I could see the protest. They hadn't arrested him yet, and the protest had started, which that I am 100% in favor for. And I want to cover this real quick. When I say I'm in favor of constitutional rights, I do not have to agree with you in order to support your rights or fight for your rights. I do not have to agree with you politically. I do not have to agree with the reason you're marching. I don't have to agree with your message. But the simple fact that you are exercising your constitutional rights, I will back that 110% any day of the week. If I have to borrow 10% from my wife or somebody else, I will. It'll be 110%. But they had begun protesting. The officer was arrested, and then it became violent. They started breaking things. They started burning buildings down. They started trashing cars. There were innocent bystanders that were drug out of their. I saw one video last night where a young black man was sitting in his car and got drug out of the car, and they beat the snot out of him. I saw one where there was an older white woman, like an elderly white woman in a wheelchair, and that guy, he hit her and kicked her and hit her with they got a fire extinguisher out, sprayed her. That's uncalled for. When you're burning down the businesses in your community, you are losing your message. It's it breaks my heart to see that we had so many people that were getting on board and really backing what everybody was saying. They understood. They were empathizing with the message. They were sympathizing with the message. They're wanting to see justice prevail. They're wanting to see these officers locked up. And then people go out and start breaking and tearing things up and rioting. And that is where you lose your message. Um, the big focus should always be on Mr. Floyd and the wrong and injustice that that man went through and the horrific way in which he died. But right now, nobody in America is talking about the pandemic, COVID-19. Nobody is talking about how Mr. Floyd died. And all because of a handful of people
Yeah.
are out destroying and demolishing communities. There was, I want to say there was 10 or 13 arrests, don't quote me on that number, please, in Minneapolis last night. And none of them were from Minneapolis, which
Yeah.
tells me that they either came in or they were bussed in, and they
That's
were
right.
there to spread dissension.
Yep.
And that is the huge problem. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that the blame rests solely on the people that are out there tearing stuff up. I would put a lot of the blame on our politicians and the media, the mainstream media. They don't come out, they don't necessarily come out and just lie to you. But when you give people half truths, and by that I mean you have information and you only tell people what you want them to know so that you can uh, emotionally charge them and get them amped up and riled up, you create this divide that we see in our nation right now. And both sides are guilty of it. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat. There's a reason I will never back a party. I will back individuals, Republican and Democrat alike. I have no problem with that. Does not mean I agree with them 100%. I do not have to agree with anybody. I'm sure if you and I sat down for any length of time, we would find things that we would disagree on.
Sure.
The overall outcome we might want would be the same, or even, in the same area, but the paths in which we would take to get there are different.
Sure.
The paths in which I choose to talk to people is based on a few things. The non-fundamentals, I used to give a speech to all my brand new soldiers before we actually deployed and went to war. And the 9 things I used to tell them is regardless of who you are, you have to live every day with purpose, motivation, and direction. In every aspect of your life, and each one of those, you have to be firm, fair, and consistent. And no matter what's going on around you, regardless, of course, to them, it was in war times. It was when there's real bullets flying both ways, you have to figure out your happy place. You have to be calm, cool, and collected. Emotion is something that leaders are not, that we don't have the luxury of emotion. We don't have the privilege of being able to kind of simmer in our emotions. We have to think clear and concise. And the second you start letting emotion in, then you'll start letting fear in. And when you have emotion and fear together, that's when you'll start making irrational decisions. And when you're a leader, however people perceive you is how they are going to act. So if you're a strong leader and you stand firm, then the people that follow you, even if they start letting fear creep in, they will look to you to see if you're doing the same. And if you stand firm on what you believe, what is just and what is right, regardless of how afraid they are, you can keep unification going. But the second you start letting fear and emotion into your life and in your heart and in your actions, you will create a divide. And that's what we're seeing right now in America.
Yeah. Very, very well said. I agree. We could talk for hours on this subject. I'm looking forward to talking to you again in the near future, but that we'll wrap it up right there. I want to thank you once again. It's an honor to meet you, sir, to share your experiences with us. Thank you again for your service to our country, Eric, and I wish you the best of luck and look forward to speaking with you again real soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on the show, sir. It was an honor to have made your acquaintance.
Thank you. Take care.
You. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.